Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Come with me as we step into the deep, dark forest of fear, and let's hope that we'll see sunrise in the morning. Tonight's show, guys, is the third chapter in our series entitled The Return to Taylor, Mississippi. Thank you all so much for your feedback and response. Has been wonderful. Again, truly humbling. I hope you guys all enjoy this next chapter. As ever, please do let me know down below in the comments. Please do like and share. And don't forget to hashtag Team Fear. Without further ado, let's get straight into that. On the surface, the forest around us was still silent and deadly, just the odd rustle of the leaves and the canopy above our heads. The journey up the steep incline to the cliff top was treacherous as beyond words. We chose to follow a small game trail up the side that seemed to have a switchback halfway up, but instead we found the switchback impassable as a recent rock slide had now blocked our through route. "We don't have time to head back again to find another way up," said Dean, climbing up on top of a large boulder to peer around for a route over or through. "No, nothing. We're going to have to either go back down or try and go up from here," Dean announced from high up. "Up? What does he mean up?" remarked Jerry. "I think he's saying we free climb there," I responded, pointing directly to the sheer rock face. No, I can't," again Jerry declared. "You don't have a choice, kid. It's up, or you could wait here for the sundown. Your choice. I know it's risky, but so is standing down here." I tried to reassure the young man, but it was no use. He was trembling with fear and couldn't make up his mind. The horizon already beginning to haze as the sun lowered in the sky. Eventually, after a good 5 minutes of myself and Dean badgering Jerry, he folded and decided to join our ascent. It wasn't much further up, and this would actually take some time off our estimated journey to the top. Dean went first, leading the way and pointing out the best footholds and grip points. Another 35 odd gruesome minutes we made it over the top and walked the remaining trail to the edge of the cliff. As we approached it, it was now hitting the golden hunting hour as the trees and everything all around was plunged into shadows and silhouettes right before true darkness takes hold of the day. The vast expanse of the park now evident from this elevated point, we could see off a ways in the distance. A good 3 or 4 miles plus was the town's church steeple high above the surrounding tree line. "We'll never make it in the 4 miles back on foot through the night," said Dean, scratching his head in frustration. "Is there not a ranger station we can make it to and hold up overnight?" I questioned. Dean looked at me and then nodded and said, "Yes, I'm afraid there is, but it's practically back no more than a couple of minutes walk from the tunnels." "I see. Then it looks like we are walking through the night. We can't just stay here. He's already got our scent. It won't be long before he or the Dogmen find us," I added. Dean stood hands on his head and then waist, shaking his head from left to right in disapproval. "Okay, it's suicide, but so is waiting for that beast to find us. Let's do it. No flashlights and absolute silence," he demanded. I nodded and looked to Jerry on my left, who was just staring out across the vast forest below us. "It will be fine, kid. We'll be back in the town in a couple of hours and back to that beautiful wife of yours," I said again, trying to boost the young man's confidence. He gulped loudly and glanced at me and then slowly nodded. Just then a mighty howl broke the early evening silence, followed by 2 more from across the forest a mile or so away at a guess. "We need to go. Now, gents," I added before we set off down the adjoining trail back towards the town in the far horizon. Still, the wind whipped and howled as we hiked our way down another trail, not knowing what or who could be waiting, hiding for us. About an hour or so later, we were cresting a hill. As we did so and looked down, there was a small clearing and a campsite haphazardly built into the side of a large boulder. As we got closer, it was apparent that whoever had been staying here was attacked and highly likely laying somewhere nearby dead. We took a closer look and could see large prints leading from the thick brush towards the tent, but from the side of it, whatever got to them did so by ripping straight through the damn nylon lining and dragging the poor souls out back into the deeper brush. God, what a way to go, I muttered to myself. Inside the destroyed tent, however, was a sat phone, a couple of high-powered hunting rifles, ammo, some climbing apparatus and a couple of large machetes. We found a second body not far from the first, except this one had been partially buried, almost like a stash for another sit-in. Getting full, huh, big guy? I again muttered to myself. We should get moving in case whatever did this decides to come back and finish, said Dean quietly, as not to give away our presence. Jerry was just, well, Jerry. He was standing, staring all around over his shoulder constantly. The damn kid gave me the willies, acting like a damn meerkat. Anyway, we trekked on further, noticing that still there was zero sign of wildlife around the trees. They're empty of squirrels and birds. The terrain taking a steeper incline with loose rocks and long grass, making the path treacherous as hell. But we managed to cover good ground, and in good time. The problem, however, soon dawned on us, as we realised we were heading into a deeper hollow, and a part of the forest that was near dark throughout the day. Nope, was my first thought. Literally, I cannot stress how dark and cold it suddenly became as we climbed and slipped our way down the final part of the incline, headed into this dauntingly dark forest. Again, this is in the middle of nowhere. Now, I've tracked guys down over Germany, France, and in the UK in the darkest, coldest environments, but this before us, as we entered, seemed to seep through the layers of clothing and creep up your back, biting cold. Eventually, literally, I guess too. Soon it was like someone had shut us in a capsule, or like when you first step into a car and close the door, the ambience. Also, as the heavy wind had seemingly stopped or couldn't permeate the dense trees and canopy, the atmosphere, it was chilling. There was only our breaths and heartbeats and a quiet babble of water somewhere off a ways, and then Jerry went and stepped on a damn dead branch laying on the ground. It made an enormous crack. Dean and I looked at each other wide-eyed. Shit, I whispered, turning to Jerry. His face like a kid who had just broke the kitchen window playing football. Half-stepped with his foot now raised just above the broken wood. Sorry, I didn't mean to, whispered Jerry. The noise must have carried a fair distance and echoed as it faded. Dean began raising his hand slightly up towards Jerry, as if to shut him up or something else. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. Dean continued, and then began shaking his head, clearly not happy. I was about to say something, but then I smelled it. Turning slowly as possible, I looked over to where Jerry was still standing, perched like an idiot. Then I heard it. A deep rumble suddenly surrounded us, and just a few meters away, halfway up a tree, with its black claws gripping to the trunk, a nasty, mean-looking male dogman. It had a thick run of hair up its shoulders and neck, almost like a mane, but more like a hyena. Its eyes just glancing at Jerry's back. Jerry had just heard it too, as he started to whimper, and his breathing was erratic. Dean moved slowly forward to Jerry, still with his hands up. I didn't know if that was for Jerry or the dogman, but anyway, he whispered to Jerry, "Whatever you do not piss yourself right now. It's a male, and he ain't gonna appreciate that." Jerry's eyes, watering and shaking body, limply nodded his head up and then down. Dean, still whispering, continued, "Jerry, just start walking towards me, okay? Everything's gonna be alright." Dean responded quietly as possible. The dogman moved into another position on the other side of the tree. Then, without a second to spare, it jumped down, landing just a few feet away from Jerry's back. Its hot breath breached the collar of his shirt. It leaned down, smelling him up and then down, eventually knocked his cowboy hat off of his head. The whole time his eyes locked onto Jerry. Even so, my arse was blowing, and I couldn't control my hands as they began to shake, and my head was almost spinning with the sight before me. I took a deep gulp. I went to unbutton my pistol holster. Ooh-wee, it did not like that. An even louder growl, or I probably should say a roar, came from this thing. In an instant, I dropped my piece. "Oh shit!" I cussed, and Dean's eyes glared at me as he shook his head at me and said, "No good, it's too close." Jerry by this point was a mess, his legs shaking and then buckled beneath him, and the creature reacted to my error. But suddenly, out in the distance, deeper in the darkness, something more terrible and more twisted responded to the roar it had just made. "Oh, please no. Not now. Not here," I muttered to myself again. The black dogman grunted a loud snort, and then tilted its huge long snout up into the air and smelled for a couple of long seconds. Then it began taking an enormous breath and released a howl so deep it painfully popped Jerry's eardrums. So now he was completely deaf. The huge Dogman pushed Jerry over with its long arm and black fingers, and then turned around. I, wasting no more time, grabbed my gun quickly, again off the ground, when, off in the distance not too far away, we could start to hear a tremendous rumbling or thumping with the breaking of big branches. It sounded like a damn freight train was coming through the forest. "We need to go now. I think it's him," I said to both of them. Dean nodded and replied, "Okay, slowly at first though, yeah?" I nodded, and we looked to Jerry, who was in pure terror. He hadn't even seen what was behind him yet. I think he was lucky, I guess, in that respect. "Come on now, Jerry. Nice and slowly, you hear me?" Dean told him reassuringly. My patience was tearing at the seams as the oncoming whatever it was got louder and louder, and the thumping was now definitely footfalls. The Dogman now turned completely away from us and stood completely bipedal towards the direction of the noise. It seemed he too was completely caught off guard. His height, it was monstrous, an enormous 8+ foot, and again, pure lean muscle upon muscle. He had to have weighed 650 or 800 pounds plus. We saw this as our opportunity, and Jer slowly began to walk towards us. We all paced backwards further and further, and just as we reached a bend in the trail and our view was slowly getting cut off by the foliage, we saw him. He made a direct attack on the Dogman, who was caught off guard as the sinister Werewolf sprang from behind some thick foliage. Tackling the Dogman, the two beasts roared out as they smashed into each other, and over, teeth and claws ripped and torn into the enemy's torso. Snarls so vicious that your own skin tried to get up off your body and escape the sound. They were pretty much matched in size too, so this wasn't going to be easy for the Werewolf. No sir. As much as I would like to say that we had somewhere close by and watched them duke it out, we didn't. In fact, we found the source of the sounds of water and began following it onwards. Still, the carnivorous crescendo booming throughout the forest behind us. I'm not sure whether the Werewolf spotted us or not, but we escaped and quickened our pace. In the turmoil, we hadn't realised the sun was setting, and now we had at best less than an hour until night fell all around us. We needed to get out of this holler or find somewhere to camp for the night. Picking up our pace a little, we were suddenly faced with 3 oncoming Dogmen that appeared out of the trees in front of us, but they seemed more occupied with the commotion of the comrade behind us. As the Dogmen darted through us and sending myself and Jerry tumbling down a slight embankment of long grass into a shallow flow of water, Dean managed to cover as they missed him entirely. It hurt like hell, but that should keep the Werewolf busy, or hopefully they would kill it, I thought to myself. As they disappeared round the bends in the trail, sending gravel and dirt flying up behind their powerful haunches, Jerry called to myself and Dean. We both clambered over to where he was at, as 2 Dogmen came roaring from the bend, climbing and writhing all over this enormous Werewolf. The beast definitely had the upper hand in strength, but the numbers kept up the healthy attack, as the 3rd and 4th Dogmen rushed out of the canopy and bounded over to the chaos of tooth and claws. Blood being sprayed and bits of fur floating through the air as these wild creatures and the abomination of the Werewolf went toe to toe in and out of our view. "Over here, look!" Again, Jerry called. Looking to what he was pointing at, there was a small cavern set into the forest floor, and after a closer look it was one way in and one way out affair. As much as we didn't want to spend the night out here, it looked like we didn't have much of a choice. At least this way, we had solid rock 3 sides of us. Myself and Dean agreed and quickly set about grabbing as much firewood and brush as possible before we all made our way down through the narrow fissure in the rock. Someone would have to go back out to get more later, but for now, we considered this a win by all accounts, as the screams echoed just around the corner and above. The sun had soon set, and the ominous feeling set hard within our guts. The battle outside went on for hours and hours. Our heads ached from the sheer volume of the violence above our heads, but something else strange happened that I think only I noticed at first. During the chaos, around an hour or so after it had begun, the roars changed. I mean, not changed, but something or someone else joined the battle. I obviously couldn't be sure, but there was definitely another creature. You see, at the time we first encountered Bill Chambers as a werewolf, he made it, or it made it, I should say. It made a gurgling, guttural noise as it slowly stalked towards us, and its howl was almost more human-like, like someone screaming to their very death. A haunting sound, really. But the Dogmen, their growling was similar but more deep and canine, and when it howled, you felt your bones clash together, the very soil beneath your feet tremoured. Anyway, I spent the rest of that night trying to work out what we were hearing until it very suddenly stopped. It was around 12:45 and temperatures had dropped considerably. We did our best to cover the entrance with thick and thorny bits of brush and foliage, and a couple of sleeping mats and some of the climbing ropes precariously holding it all in place above our heads almost. We laughed in the early hours that if the Dogman or Werewolf didn't kill us, it would probably be the heavy branches and bits above us falling onto our heads. As the chaos above suddenly stopped, there was a series of heavy footfalls in different directions, one in particular pausing just above us, right next to our hiding spot. Jerry was near having a seizure when he finally laid eyes on one of the Dogmen, before it jumped and was gone from sight, slowly crashing off like the others into the forest. We sat there in silence for what felt like days. It was only a few hours, eventually having to light a fire as the cold started to really affect us. It was risky, yes. We had no choice at this point. Soon, the small fire was going, just enough to warm our feet and hands. It was working perfectly for an hour, maybe more, when out of nowhere, there was a big, heavy stomp, stomp, stomp. "Oh God," whispered Jerry, looking up to the hole above us. Dean leaned forward to get a better view, and I followed suit, trying to see what, and BAM! There it was. The werewolf's huge wolf head and piercing green eyes leaned in closer to the tangle of brush and leaves covering our hideout. Its black fur or hair catching illumination of the fire. Its eyes reflecting like torches. "Oh shit," I said aloud as this deep booming growl exploded within the cave. The werewolf opening its mouth to reveal an arsenal of sharp, twisted teeth. It was just too big to get in, however. At least that's how it looked, and that's how I prayed. It stared at each of us menacingly, its upper body clearly ripped to shreds, with massive wounds running in a pattern of 4 claws, saliva instantly drooling from its maw. "Oh God, we're screwed," said Jerry as he looked to Dean for an answer to this nightmare. He was going to need a miracle. Screw this," I said aloud as I raised my MP5 and shouted, "Cover your ears, boys," and I began unloading hellfire to this sucker's face. It may not kill him, but I was going to do my best to hurt, maim or scar him before he killed us. I'm not going out, not without a fight. Dean soon joined me and unloaded his judge, almost point blank, into the werewolf's open, snarling mouth. It must have worked as the shriek it made afterwards, even Jerry heard. Bits of its jagged teeth shattering all over. Finally, it seemed to stumble back and then out of sight. Jerry still sat there, pistol in hand, not even managing to fire a round. I said to Jerry to easily lower his weapon and take a breath before he passed out. It's funny, he reminded myself of a younger me, foolish, clumsy, but he had a good heart. I too had a good heart long ago. I guess it got lost somehow along the way. After around 10 minutes we were hoping that it had enough and had moved on, or of course the other scenario would be that it was out there, watching and waiting. My watch read 4:57 AM, so at least the dawning day's sunlight would soon breach the horizon, and eventually this god-awful cursed forest. Neither one of us wanted to be the first out, but someone had to, and seeing as it was my gig, I had the short straw. Upon reaching just near the surface I stopped and listened. It was quiet, but there was a few bird songs tweeting away, totally different to how things were only hours before. I signalled for the others to follow close, and we all one by one made our way back onto terra firma. We felt like lumps of meat just hanging there in a butcher shop window, and so we decided it had been long enough and we must push on whilst daylight is on our side. We gradually made our way out of the deep hollow and sinister dark forest and found ourselves at a clearing with an outlook. In the distance, I could now see the town. It was at least 3 miles to go, and somehow we had gone on a wide berth of the town and the surrounding forest. Hours later, and beaten and bruised, not to mention completely and utterly exhausted, we came to a small freshwater pond. Some deer, lazy laying in the sun rays, bathed and startled by our sudden presence, scurried and bounced away back into the deeper forests. Bang, bang, bang! Gunshots rang out in the near distance. Myself and Dean glanced and then ran full pace towards the gunfire. Whoever it was, they had to be local and might need our help. Hopefully, they can give us a ride back to town. Instead, what we found, around 20 minutes later, was complete, unbridled carnage. First we thought it was another poor group of campers, as we could make out a large tent and a few others. Then we noticed the odd assortment of empty gallon bottles and distillery equipment and goodness knows what else. The smell hit us from way back, and soon it was clear this was no campsite but a damn meth lab. Multiple bodies laid, torn to odds and ends, bloodied and heaped in piles all over the forest floor and surrounding trees. And Jerry blew carrots all over the place. I handed him some smelling salts to cover the smell. I guess I had just become used to the rotting vegetable mixed with meat, bloody smell and taste. Dean remained with Jerry, keeping an eye on the outside whilst I went into the main tent to investigate further. Inside, I found some keys to the ATVs round back, but not much else was useful. I did, however, grab Jerry a big old stack of dollars. Had to have been 100 grand easily, give or take a few thousand, but I thought his little family could use it better than it just sitting out here and rotting. I was just about to leave and check in the other tents and the ATVs when I spotted some more fresh blood. It was on the floor but disappeared as it got to the back end, underneath a big old storage trunk. I remarked to myself. What do we have here? I added. Aiming my pistol, I kicked the trunk out the way to reveal another secret trapdoor hatch. I called for Dean and Jerry to come and check it out, but before I could finish my sentence, the hatch flew open and two long, huge, hairy arms came reaching out straight for me. Jerry managed to swing his machete straight down and through the beast's right arm as it rose up and out of this hatch. It howled a loud and painful howl, was cut short by Jerry once again cutting into its head with a sickening crunch. Jeez, Jerry, buddy. Thank you, man. You goddamn saved my ass. I said, amazed at the moment Jerry had decided enough was enough. Either that or he just lost the plot altogether. It was a damn meth head, crackhead, werewolf. I mean, for the love of God, as if it wasn't bad enough already. It looked like Bill Chambers had now started to infect the not-so-local population. It took another 5 minutes of all three of us hacking into this creature's head and face before it finally collapsed. I swear to you, his damn jaw was still gurning from all the drugs pumping through the system. What a damn nightmare. Anyway, we found some jerry cans of fuel in the hidden room where it was hiding and checked the ATVs to make sure they had fuel and was working. Just before we hit the road, we doused the meth lab with fuel, setting it ablaze. If you know anything about meth labs, it's that they're really flammable. Whoo-wee! Kaboom! We hit the damn trail hard, each redlining our ATVs, trying desperately to leave this forest as fast as possible. Within minutes of us hitting the old logging road long forgotten by the residents of Taylor, we were being followed from both sides. Loud growls and yips could be heard, accompanied by the ever-present smashing of branches and roots, as an unknown number of dogmen chased us. Even on the horrendous dirt road, we still averaged a good speed of 55 miles per hour, but they still maintained to stay hot on our tails. Over the noise of the three loud four-stroke engines, I could just hear young Jerry screaming to himself in pure, undiluted terror. Soon, the bordering fields and town were rolling up on the horizon, and I pushed the ATV even harder, now with two gigantic male dogmen running alongside me. One of them reaching out to hold onto the ATV's back wheel arch. I swerved into it with a huge thump and sent it tumbling head over heels into its buddy, with enormous creatures knocking through the side tree line like bowling pins, shattering and splinters and wood and foliage everywhere. I looked over towards Jerry and I could see another two more emerging from the tree line to his right. He was too busy just keeping the vehicle on the road, so I had to take a shot. The problem was, we were nearing a bend, and there wasn't much time or room for any mistakes otherwise. Jerry might lose his face. Jerry! I screamed above the crashing and roaring of our engines. Jerry! He glanced this time and I pointed to his right. He took one look and freaked out. His ATV began sliding all over the place and then almost rolling. I saw my opportunity and fired off a few bursts of my MP5. It seemed to hold them off, and thank goodness Jerry got a damn grip as we reached the fields and the tree line cleared out each side of us. There was at least 5, maybe 6 of these black creatures racing towards us, some on all fours like a wolf or dog, others bipedal, in broad daylight. They didn't intend on letting us escape, and this was their final opportunity. If they were going to get us, now was it.
500 metres to the
first bit of blacktop road.
350 metres.
Scrape. The huge dogman took a mighty slice out of my ATV.
200 metres.
In doing so, it had cut my fuel line, and suddenly I realised my power was diminishing. I shouted to Dean to come closer. I was going to have to jump to his.
100 metres.
I jammed the gas pedal down with a hiking cane, and then I jumped for Dean's ATV, just missing the hungry mouths and sharp claws of the dogmen trying to grab at me in mid-air. The ATV was now ghosting alongside us. I pulled my charger out and fired a quick burst of shots straight at the gas tank. With an almighty boom, it exploded, and in seconds it downed 3 of the beasts stalking us. We hit the smooth blacktop, and I looked back to see the creatures coming to a stop one by one, their huge frames sliding in the dusty dirt. "That was too close," said Dean. "Yeah, I know, brother. I know. Let's get the kid to his wife and get some damn whiskey," I added with a slightly hearty chuckle. Dean joined me as we made our way into town, both with huge waves of relief. As the regular folks of Old Taylor looked at us, we bombed through the streets covered in dirt and blood. Finally, after a lifetime it seemed, we were able to leave Jerry and his lovely wife and head to the bar for that damn drink. And boy did we drink. I mean, not just your average, "oh, I need to forget about the girl," or "oh, I just lost my job" kind of drink-up session. No, I'm talking about wrecked. We ended up bribing old Dan, the landlord, to let us have a lock-in until the early hours. Around 1 AM, I remembered the journal from the underground room, dusted it off on the table, and myself and Dean began going through the jotted notes and some of the formulas for apparent cult practices or rituals. Some of it was sick and twisted, to be honest, speaking of deals with demonic entities to human sacrifice. Anyway, a short while later, I turned the page and detail before me was a family tree. Well, actually it was 2 family trees, the first being that of the Peters family, the other of that, at a guess, the Dogman pack in the forest. Within the notes, I read how back in the 40s the town of Taylor was overrun with these Dogmen. They were snatching children from their beds, and many hikers went missing, but seemingly most of all, hardest hit was the forestry woodsmen. The loggers would go in groups of 6, maybe more, most never to be seen or heard of again. As the town grew more and more concerned by the day, it appeared that the father of the head of the Peters household decided drastic action had to be taken. Now, with the help of his cousins, they called on the dark elements for assistance and was granted the strength of 10 men and 10 wolves. Unfortunately for Father Peters and his cousins, the power granted to them was too powerful, and Mr. Peters transformed without any warning and laid slaughter to his entire family. That was all except for a young newborn baby who had yet to be named. Later down the line I did some more research and found this young life was then whisked away by authorities and placed into the care system, where he would eventually grow up and be adopted. Adopted under the family of the Chambers household. Bill Chambers was the last surviving member of the Peters family. He must have contracted the werewolf disease that fateful night. The next morning was as expected, met with troubled residents wanting to know what was happening. Oh, and a hangover my student self would have been proud of. I mean, my tongue literally grew hair, or at least that's how it felt. We grabbed some strong coffee and headed out of the bar into the blinking daylight of the high street. A police responder car came screeching around the corner of Old Taylor Road, bleaching the tyres and roaring its engine towards us, and then he went straight past. Dean and I looked to one another, baffled. "This doesn't look good," I remarked to him. "Come on, let's go and follow," he replied, and we jumped back into the ATV and screeched our way back into the road and in the direction of the police responder unit. Rounding the end of the high street and coming to the town square, we realised what was going on as our hearts sunk into our arse. There, atop of the old clock monument, was the town mayor, Mr. Roberts, his body impaled upside down on the top spire of the clock, his insides left dangling in the morning breeze. There was a group of horrified onlookers gathered around as the officials tried to contain the scene, raised voices and crying accompanying the warm morning sun. This town, whether it liked it or not, had to admit they now had a very real issue. As to who was responsible, was it the Dogmen, or was it him, the werewolf? I don't know. Officials didn't want to work with us, and even though we gave them everything we had and just found out and witnessed, to be honest, I felt they knew this was coming a long time ago. Now, to get this over with, once and for all. Question was, how was I going to lure him to where I wanted him? I needed bait. No, I needed live bait. "Jerry," I said aloud to myself. "What's that, bud?" asked Dean. "Oh, nothing, brother, but I think I know how we're going to get him to come to us, right where we want him," I replied, reaching into my pocket and pulled out my pack of smokes and lit a cigarette. "Where's the hardware store? We have got some traps to build." Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that short chapter there. I do promise the big finale chapter is going to be humongous. At least an hour and a half extra audio. And of course, I'm going to compile all of the chapters together in one for your enjoyment, of course, there. Please, as ever, do let me know down below what your thoughts. As ever, please do like and share. And if you haven't subscribed to DMT already, please do. And don't forget to throat punch the notification bell to stay up to date with all DMT content. And remember, guys, above all, if you're going camping in the deep, dark forests, keep your wits about you, your eyes open and your ears. And remember, be safe, not sorry.